Yo, what's up, KenDeep here, and this time another UI and UX video actually. You know, there's a couple of things that I always wanted to talk about, but that I never really got a good video to go into. I want to talk about established UI and UX elements that not too many fighting games have really utilized or implemented. So I want to redo this video in order to bring more of a focus to these nice features. I'm gonna limit myself to 5 elements that I want to talk about. They have to be minor features or minor things that have great benefit, so that they're easy to implement but really do a lot for the end user like us. So you will not see things, for example, like customizable life bars as you can see in Tekken, or mini games as loading screens as you can also see in Tekken. That's funny, right? Before we start, this is not a ranking. These are just 5 random things in no particular order that I think would be great to have in fighting games, period. Well then, let's get to it. Number 1 is something so minor that you might think, wait, this isn't in fighting games commonly? There's almost no single game that has this implemented. I'm talking about selecting music. Almost every game has the music predetermined by either the matchup or the stage that you have selected. Of all the games that I've played, I think mostly anime games have only done this. I mean, there is Street Fighter V, of course, but there it's limited to online play, so it's not really as useful for tournaments or, you know, for casual play in a fighting game club. So yeah, fighting games, please just steal the music selection thing from Arxis. Pretty please? Thank you. Number 2 is actually a big pet peeve of mine. What I want to talk about is leaving online matches. Of course, rage quitting and stuff like that kind of sucks. But then what about if you are playing on a casual match, right? Xrd had that, and I think every other Arxis game after that didn't. I don't remember this being in Street Fighter V either. I don't think Tekken has this either. There are very few games that have this, even though it's a very useful feature. Being able to, you know, play a casual match and then being like, ah damn, that's 7 frames delay, even though it was 4 bar. I don't think this connection is good enough. But, you know, I'll just leave the match and it's fine. You just need 5 seconds or 10 tops, you know, and then you left the match. This could be a little bit more problematic for ranked. It's like, okay, but how do we do this with ranked, right? You can't just leave a ranked match. There are options for that. You could either implement a forfeit option, so that if a player feels like he doesn't want to play this particular match anymore, he can just forfeit the match. Or you could even do something a little bit more cooperative. You could implement a voting mechanism where you can vote to preemptively close the match. And if both players vote for that option, then the match ends. There are definitely ideas that you can do in order to make this a lot more comfortable for the player. So yeah, please, Xrd did this. Why can't we have it anymore? Now number 3. Yeah, number 3 is something that I actually first saw in Granblue Versus, and I gotta say, I don't want to miss this. I think this is one of the coolest things about Granblue Versus, and it's such a small thing, but it makes life easier as a commentator, it makes life easier as a player, as a spectator, it makes life easier, period. And that is just displaying if something was a punish or not. You know, this little label on the side, just say punish if a move actually hit as a punish. You know, it doesn't just make it easier to understand the situation as a player, it also makes it easier to learn the game, because you're learning intricacies between the matchup right while you're playing it, and that's super powerful, you know? Like, for example, if I had Boxer in Street Fighter, right? And he would do a rush punch. Because it can hit in different ways, being able to see how the difference in frame advantage can be is very useful. And if I by accident hit in a different scenario and I see, oh, this is a punish, and then I understand, oh, this was the context for this. This shouldn't be a punish usually, or this should be a punish usually, also the same way around. It makes things much easier to understand like that. I think this is a feature that every fighting game should have. Next point. This is gonna be a doozy because it's about element size. Combo counters, life bar, super bar, stun meter, etc, you name it. This is a little bit more ambiguous And it's also kind of dependent on the specific feature and the specific element, right? I mean, we know about Guilty Gear making elements too big. 99 hits in a non-combo game. You know, at the same time, there are also a lot of fighting games that shy away from making their UI elements noticeable. Perfect example for that is Granblue Versus, where the cooldown icons are very small and they're tucked away in the corner. So it makes it very difficult to really notice if your move is still on cooldown or not. You have to actively look for it. Granblue isn't the only game that does this wrong. I mean, you can even look at old games like King of Fighters 11. I mean, 2006 isn't that old, but you get what I mean. You look at the stun bar at the top left or top right of each player. It's a pixel height. The height is 1 pixel big. It's unbelievably hard to look at. It's really bad. This is one of the points where fighting games would do well to copy from Street Fighter. I think Street Fighter does this extremely well. Both 4 and 5. Each element is clearly given a certain importance and displayed accordingly. So the stun bar is something that happens kind of sporadically. It's not something that happens all the time, and it's also, you know, it has a pattern to it. You kind of get a feel for when you're about to get stunned, so you don't need to have this in your face all the time. But at the same time, it's quite important to have it somewhere. So it's quite close to the center, and it's not too big, but it's also not small that you will overlook it if you look at it. The V-gauge is something that happens in a very set pattern. If you have this much health left, or if you got hit that much often, then you will probably have V-gauge. So because of that, Capcom purposefully made the V-gauge a little bit smaller than the super bar, because the super bar is much more volatile and much more likely to have different fillings depending on the scenario, while the V-gauge is a lot more consistent in that way. But at the same time, the V-gauge lights up much more effectively, so you're also noticing when your V-gauge is full. That's a great design from Capcom. Bravo Capcom, UI works. Now with my final point, I will kind of jump into what I was talking about in number 3, the counter indicator. Granted, in almost every game you will have a counter indicator. Even in Dragon Ball FighterZ, you have counter indicators, even though the counter doesn't do anything. There is literally no change in the state when you got counter hit it. It's super weird, but it's still useful. It's absolutely useful, especially as a commentator or spectator, because it gives you the information, player 1 pressed a button, or player 2 mashed. So in a way it's still very useful. There's one thing that I think BlazBlue does exceptionally well. It really makes the counter hit audible. Whenever you get counter hit in BlazBlue, you will hear the announcer yelling "Counter!" making it so much easier as a player to react to the counter hit happening. We have easier time reacting to things when they're audible in comparison to when we just see them. Both the offensive and the defensive side, it gives you more context into what's happening. And that's always a plus in my eyes. You can also overdo this, right? So for example, we have Strive. Strive doesn't give you context, it pulls you out of the context. Because of all the camera shake, the big zoom in, the fonts overlaying the whole stage, giving you no perspective on where you are relative to the screen. The important part is that every UI element should give you context, and BlazBlue does this amazingly well with the counter hit indicator. So Axis, please just pull it a notch down, will you? Strive really doesn't need it that in your face. BlazBlue did it well, just copy what you already did well, don't overdo it. Well, what do you think about this list? Is there any other element that you wanted to see? Or is there anything you would say like, yeah, that's exactly what I want, or that's exactly what I'm missing from my game? Leave a comment down below, give this video a like if you liked it, and feel free to subscribe. I also do a stream always on Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch. Currently a little bit of a hiatus, but you know, my internet will come back soon, hopefully. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon and see you next time. Peace.